Oh, you touch my tra-la-la.
So, about the battle events, there were many events that took place, but I think the most important for the Union, they just had it all. I mean, they had plenty of men. I mean, they were pretty similar. I mean, there was somewhat of a size difference. I mean, a few thousand is not that much in an army, but, you know, some of these, the Federal infantry crossed the river in boats and forced Confederates out of Fredericksburg. That was a great beneficial start for the Union Army, but the Confederates still made a comeback after that. So, also, advancing Federal pickets precipitate a vicious counterattack from Law Confederate Brigade. So this, I'd have to say, was probably one of a very good Federal attack. Federals, they had quite a bit of lead on the Confederate Army, but once again, that high ground is what they need. I mean, the high ground. If you have the high ground, you basically have the war or the battle. And also, you know, it's just following a Federal bombardment, Meade attacks and is repulsed. Now this is pretty bad for the Federal war, sending out that attack and being counterattacked by the Confederates. You know, the Federals, they did a pretty good job, even though they lost that war. But, you know, there are many, many, many wars in the Civil War, and this is just one of the many wars that the Federals did not do so well on. So, I'll give a +1 thumbs up to the Confederates for this one.
Some of the battle events on the Confederate side of the war include December 11th in the morning. One of our snipers delays the completion of Federal pontoon bridges over the river. One of our best attacks on December 13th, it was in the morning around 10 a.m., where Pelham prevents main Federal attack with only one gun on their flanks. Oh yes, and around 5 p.m., the Confederates in strong positions repulse a repeated attack by Federalists with minimal losses. And that is one of the key events of this battle, and that's what made those old unis lose.
So, about the Union generals, there's quite a few of them. Many of them were significant in many ways, but my favorite, I would have to say, would be Major General Ambrose E. Burnside. He led most of the war of the Fredericksburg, but I believe he led my father the best. He was in his platoon, and he was just a great guy, you know. I couldn't just tell you enough how much I love Ambrose E. Burnside. But I also have to give recognition to the other 3 generals that we know of. Major General Edwin V. Sumner, Major General Joseph Hooker, Major General William B. Franklin. Now, all of these generals, they were very significant in many wars. And here are their pictures. Shows it on screen. So, many of these generals, they led lots of these attacks. The only mistake that I believe they made, which led to the Confederate win, was that they did not take the high ground early. They were more on the attacking, opposed to the defensive, which the Confederates mainly took. And that's why the Confederates took the high ground. The Union generals, that was probably their biggest mistake, and it probably may have cost them that war. But they won many other wars, so that was fine too.
Some of the Confederate generals include General Robert E. Lee, who was the main general in this battle, Lieutenant General James Longstreet, Lieutenant General Stonewall Jackson, and Major General J.E.B. Stuart are some of the other generals in this battle. That concludes our major generals for the Confederate side. Thank you. Okay.
Back in '62, when my daddy fought in Fredericksburg, it was pretty devastating for me, my losses, thinking about my daddy, but I knew he fought in a good war. Fredericksburg was the largest and the deadliest battle of the whole Civil War. It also was the first battle that had combat in the urban parts of cities. The battle also had the largest concentration of soldiers. It was almost 200,000 people. In the end, the Confederates won because of their strong army and high ground on top of Marye's Heights. The battle's results made the Union's morale take a plunge and give the Confederates a big boost in happiness after their first loss at Antietam.
So, the eyewitness account of a soldier from the Union Army. Now, not many soldiers took the time to write a journal about all the things that have happened in these wars, but a few very special people, and it's highly recorded today, and we have many of the journals in libraries in different places of the world in the archives. So here's one eyewitness account from the Federal Army. We attempted at 4 a.m. this morning to complete the pontoon bridges in front of the city. The Rebs opened fire and drove our men from their work. Then commenced the most terrific cannonading ever heard or witnessed on this continent. Time after time, the Rebs, concealed and protected by the buildings of the city, drove our men from the bridges with great loss. At length, our brave General Burnside gave the order to turn guns upon the city. We've crossed the river. We occupy the city. Cheers from our brave boys fill the air tonight. The rebels are still on force on the second range of hills beyond the city. Another fight will occur tomorrow unless the rebels skedaddle tonight. The city is badly smashed. Colonel John S. Crocker, 93rd New York State Volunteer Infantry, to my dear Hattie. So, in this passage, Colonel Crocker, he talks about how the rebels are forcing them back, and talking about how they may return on that night. Of course, he calls them the rebels, but as we mentioned previously, we call them the Confederates. He calls them the rebels, and the way he calls his team, his boys. Now, that is a way of unionship. You're staying together as one team, going against the Confederates. That was the key thing to the war, was standing with each other and fighting as one. It may have not worked out for this Battle of Fredericksburg, but it can be beneficial. So anyways, that is what we have for today. Bye.